Do another video on the channel. First off, just to explain why there's been such a long break between this video and my last one. So to cut a long story short, I got down to the final two for a social media job at ATP Media, which is sort of the dream job. Unfortunately missed out in the final interview to someone with more experience. Then a couple of days later, a fantastic opportunity came up at Tennis Head to join as a digital content assistant. We do magazines, videos, images, articles, currently covering the French Open with lots of live commentaries as well. Um, so obviously took that role and I've been there about a month now. It's been very, very busy, which is basically why I haven't been doing YouTube videos. First couple of weeks was lots of training and then I've jumped straight into the French Open. So it's the first Grand Slam I've really covered in a tennis job and I'm loving it so far, but it's just been very busy. But I did want to get back into YouTube. It was something that I was thoroughly enjoying doing, seeing the numbers go up and interacting with people in the comments. Creating the videos is something I love doing as well. So I'm definitely going to jump back into YouTube. Starting off today by looking at the men's quarterfinals. Just giving me previews and predictions. I have tried to watch as many of the matches as possible, but it's sometimes difficult when you're working and trying to transcribe interviews and write articles and watch matches at the same time. But I'll do my best. So starting off with Novak Djokovic against Mateo Baratini, and I spoke a few weeks ago on Twitter about Lorenzo Musetti, and I watched him for a few weeks on clay, and I immediately said this guy is going to be an elite clay court player in the next few years, and I think today just backs that statement up. And after a couple of long matches in Grand Slams and it being his first major run, I didn't expect him to perform as well as he did against Djokovic today. I thought he might win a set in a tiebreak of 7-5 if he could produce his best for an hour and a half. But I certainly didn't expect him to do as well as he did. And for the first 2 hours and the two sets he won, it was quite a breathtaking and unbelievable performance. A sort of performance that you remember for a long time. And it was disappointing the way it finished. I think you can look at Djokovic, and as a Djokovic fan, I think Djokovic is at his best when he's aggressive and moves inside the baseline, looks to move players around, backs up his first serve, which he done in the third, fourth, and fifth sets. I think in the opening couple of sets, Djokovic was too passive on the baseline. He was just too defensive, putting balls back in court and just allowing Musetti to tee off. But you have to give credit to Musetti. His shot making, his flair, the drop shots, the backhand winners down the line, the forehand as well today was just sensational. And he completely, I thought, played Djokovic off the court for the first couple of sets. And his temperament and big points in the tie breaks, he was outstanding as well. Kept going through shots, kept hitting the lines. But even at two sets up, I did fancy Djokovic to come back just because of that experience, that mental strength, the fitness that he's got. And as I said, with Musetti, it was his first real Grand Slam run. So to have four longish matches in Grand Slams and then go up against Novak Djokovic, Musetti as well, he played two very, very long opening sets. And you always felt that Djokovic was going to come back into it. And it was always going to be difficult for Musetti to turn the match around when Djokovic got in his stride and got into fourth and fifth gear, got momentum in the match. It was always going to be difficult for Musetti to turn the tide again. But what a performance from Musetti, and he's going to have a huge, huge future in the game. To take two sets off Novak Djokovic is, as we all know, such a difficult task. And the shot making, the flair, the drop shots, everything about Musetti is just so exciting. He's a great player to watch, and I'm sure he's going to bring a lot to the court. But looking ahead for Djokovic, I think it was a wake-up call and a test that he probably needed. He'd coasted through so far. I think in the first two sets, he really, really struggled with Musetti's central slices. I think it's something that Djokovic has struggled with for quite a while now. The forehand seems to let him down at times. Made a run of unforced errors, particularly in the tie breaks in the forehand. And I think, in the third, fourth, and fifth set, obviously Musetti really, really struggled physically. But I think Djokovic's aggressive style, and he found the first serve, which was massively important as well. So I think for Djokovic, as I said, it's a wake-up call, and it's a sign that he needs to be more aggressive on the clay court. He can't camp behind the baseline and wait for mistakes from the likes of Baratini and Musetti because they're not going to come. And I think Djokovic had his aggressive style can break through the defences of the likes of Baratini and Massetti consistently, and he's better off playing that way. So Baratini is quite an interesting one. I haven't seen too much of him, to be fair, so far in this tournament, but I think he's had a very good season. A player that I think has a huge game and can blow anybody off the court on a given day. But as we saw against Zverev in the final a few weeks ago, that when he seems to get to those match-defining moments, his game can break down. He can make unforced errors and double faults. I think Baratini's, one major win away from, you know, potentially winning a Grand Slam. I think he's got that good of a game. Brilliant first serve, absolute monster of a forehand. I think his movement and his backhand improving over time. Not quite sure they're good enough yet to beat Nadal or Djokovic or a Tsitsipas, for example, but a player that's certainly on the rise, playing outstanding tennis, and he obviously gets a walk over after the withdrawal of Roger Federer, and I'm not sure that's a positive thing. On one hand, you've got that Djokovic has had to play 3.5 hours, whereas Berrettini's had a few days off. But I think he was in a fantastic rhythm to not play for a few days and have to jump in straight against a match fit Djokovic, who's coming on the back of a comeback from 2 sets to love down. I'm not sure it's a great thing for Berrettini. I think if Djokovic does go out and be aggressive and look to attack the defence and expose the movement of Berrettini, then I think Djokovic is a clear winner. But if Djokovic does what he done today and be passive and camp behind the baseline, allow Berrettini inside the court on that forehand, and Berrettini serves well, then it could be a very different match. But I think Djokovic won't make the same mistake twice. I expect to see a much better start from Djokovic than what we saw today. A complete different style of tactics, where he does look to get in behind the first serve and shorten the points. I think the course is playing pretty quick this week in France. So I do expect to see a much better start from Djokovic, and if he can get that first set under his belt, as I've said, I don't think Berrettini's the best under pressure at the back end of sets, whereas that's usually where Djokovic is at his best. So if he can clean his game up, then I expect Djokovic to win this one in 3 or 4 sets. Moving on now to Stefanos Tsitsipas against Daniil Medvedev, and as soon as the draw opened up, I thought that's as good a chance as Stefanos Tsitsipas will ever get to reach a Grand Slam final. Dominic Thiem was bang out of form, as we saw in his first round exit. Daniil Medvedev hates clay and has never won a match at the French Open. So the only really looked Zverev to be in Tsitsipas's way. And my one criticism of Tsitsipas has always been the future. I'm a huge fan of his, and I've always tipped him to go pretty far in Grand Slams. But I think we've seen with Tsitsipas in the past that he's been dragged into wars in second and third round matches when he really shouldn't be. Opponents that he should be outclassing, he's been having to play 3 and 4 hours and go 5 sets, and we've seen his tank sort of emptied by the time he's reached the quarterfinals and semi-finals against the Nadals and Djokovic, who've coasted through, which hasn't allowed Tsitsipas to produce his best in the match-defining stages of the tournament. And he hasn't made that same mistake of this Roland Garros. Everything I've seen from Tsitsipas has been very good so far. I think he served fantastically. The backhand is as good as ever. His movement again is improving all the time. His consistency, and I think he's rallying and being more patient, timing his attacks a lot better. I think Tsitsipas used to try and hit flashy winners and attack the wrong balls, but he seems to be learning all the time. His backhand slice seems to be very good, and I think he's getting better and better on a clay court all the time, and he's got the confidence now, the maturity. He's beaten Nadal, he's beaten Djokovic. He's not in the same boat as a Massetti or a Sinner who haven't had those big Grand Slam wins. We saw Tsitsipas last year at the Roland Garros semi-finals blow Djokovic off the court for 2 sets before running out of steam in the fifth. Tsitsipas has got a fantastic draw up against Medvedev, who I must say I've been massively surprised by. I didn't think Medvedev would get past Garin in the last round, but I was mightily impressed by his performance. And I've always been critical of Medvedev's attitude on a clay court. When we saw him early this year hitting the court and saying, "I hate playing the surface," and his head goes down, he makes runs of unforced errors. But this tournament so far, when he's had a little setback, he seemed to be regrouped. He hasn't lost his anger on the court. He's, as I say, regrouped. He's adapted. He's kept playing his style, and it's worked for him very well so far. And I think with Medvedev, when he gets to this sort of stage, you do have to make him a contender. He is the number 2 ranked player in the world, and I think on a hard court, he's probably been the best player in the world, other than Djokovic, over the past 18 months. So you do have to certainly make him a contender. When you look at the likes of um, Tsitsipas, he hasn't been to a Grand Slam final yet, and Zverev's only been to the one. So Medvedev's on par with all of those, and he's got the confidence now. I'm assuming he's adapting to the clay courts. They're playing pretty quick, which will suit Medvedev as well. But I do fancy Tsitsipas to come through this one. I do think he's more at home on a clay court. I think it's a massive opportunity to reach his first ever Roland Garros final. So I'm going to tip Tsitsipas to come through that one in 4 or 5 sets. I think that's probably the highlight quarter final of the draw, but I'm going to go with Tsitsipas to come through it. Moving on now to Zverev against Fakina. And Zverev again, I've been mightily impressed with him again so far this tournament. Another player that's probably been guilty in the past of working too hard in the first week, but he's breezed through. Looked every bit a Grand Slam champion. We obviously saw him in that US Open final in 2019 when he famously lost from 2 sets up against Dominic Thiem, but hopefully use that experience as a positive, and it's set up to be a mouth-watering semi-final clash against Stefanos Tsitsipas. That was the sort of projected draw and what we expected to see in the semi-final of that half, and that's what I think we'll get. I think Zverev, he's serving very well. His game seems to be much in control. The forehand, the backhand, hitting plenty of winners. Great hands around the net. Seems to be timing his attacks very well. And Davidovich Fakina, what a fight. I think he's probably been the story of the tournament. I did have him in my wild card at the sweepstake at work, so he's done a fantastic job. I've thoroughly enjoyed watching his matches. I think his 5th set win the other day was just one of the best games of tennis I've ever seen. To hit a drop shot, a underarm serve at breakpoint down at 6-5 in the 5th after missing 2 absolute sitters on match point, and his forehand was just outrageous. But such a great watch. But I think his tournament run, brilliant, fantastic run, probably comes to an end in this one. He's spent a lot of time on court. He's a great fighter, and I'm sure his adrenaline and momentum will pull him through, and he'll produce absolutely everything and not leave anything on the court. But I think Zverev's, timing and heavy ground strokes might just have Fakina on the run from an early stage. And if Zverev can get that first set under his belt, get the confidence and get those monster serves and forehands going, then I do think this match is sort of on Zverev's rat. It's a match that he should very much win. A huge favourite in. So as I say, Fakina will fight for every ball and probably produce some crazy winners and shots along the way. But I expect the overall consistency and experience and quality of Zverev to shine through in the end, and him to reach the semi-final against Tsitsipas. And finally, Rafael Nadal against Diego Schwartzman. And Yannick Sinner against Nadal. I always expected Nadal to come through that one, but Sinner's played some quite big matches now for an early age, and we saw him do well at Roland Garros last year. And I expect him to give Nadal a good strong test today. And when he was serving a 5-4 in the first, I thought this could get interesting if Sinner won the first set, but I was majorly disappointed with Sinner in that match. He done so well to get to 5-4 or 5-3 even in the first set, and then he lost, I think it was 16 out of 18 points, and Rafa took it 7-5. And you can always forgive Rafa winning, a set from that position if he plays outrageous tennis. We all know nobody can live with Rafa Nadal, and he's best on a clay court, particularly in Paris. But Sinner put no sort of fight up. He's 5-4 up serving, and I think he threw in a double fault, a couple of poor backhands, forehands, and just gifted Nadal a break back. And from that point on, the match was gone. If Sinner's not winning a set against Nadal in the first and 5-3 up, then you're never really going to win a set against him. And I just think Sinner's got a little bit more experience now than the likes of Musetti, and I was expecting to see a better showing. And 5-3 up, I think he should be getting at least close to winning that set, or at least forcing Nadal to play some of his best tennis. But he just sort of gifted it to Nadal in the end, which was disappointing from Sinner's point of view. Diego Schwartzman has had not the best 18 months of his career, but has bounced back. We know he's at his home on clay, and he's produced some fantastic tennis today. I managed to catch some of his match against Jan-Lennard Struff, and some of the backhand passes, and the fighting spirit, and defence and variety that Schwartzman showed was very, very impressive. We know he's caused problems against Nadal previously on clay, but I think Nadal's in a rich frame of form. I think he's playing very, very well. We saw him play brilliantly well in Rome. He's continued that into Paris, and yeah, I expect him to have too much firepower and variety for Schwartzman. I think, Schwartzman's a fantastic defensive player, but the way Nadal is striking his forehand and the backhand this week has been exceptional. And although I do think Schwartzman can perhaps cause some difficulties to Rafa, especially if he doesn't serve well, I always just expect the firepower of Rafa to shine through. And we all just know how good Rafa's all-round game is at the French. And I've said from day one of this tournament that I think the only person that could trouble Rafa at the French this year is Djokovic. Perhaps Tsitsipas. Now I've seen the draw. If Tsitsipas can cruise to the semi-final, he is going to have a difficult quarter against Medvedev, and then probably a marathon semi-final against Zverev. So it depends how Tsitsipas comes through them two matches, but I think Djokovic in the semi-final will have a good chance of beating Nadal, especially if it's a sunny day and plays fast like a hard court. Then I would give Djokovic some sort of chance if he got there. But yeah, I don't see Diego Schwartzman upsetting Rafael Nadal in Paris. So I'm going to go with Djokovic, Tsitsipas, Zverev and Nadal to win those quarterfinals. So as I say, from now on, I will be back on YouTube. I'll be previewing the semi-finals and finals as well. With the women's tennis, unfortunately, I haven't seen too much of the women's draw. I did see Coco Gauff's fantastic performance today against Ons Jabeur, but I'm going to try and watch all the women's quarterfinals, and then I'll be back previewing those semi-finals and finals as well. So the second week of the Grand Slam is obviously always the best. Some fantastic matches coming up. Can't wait to see how all the matches play out and how the tournament concludes. But yeah, I'll be back probably in a couple of days' time to preview the women's semi-finals and also the men's semi-finals. So do enjoy the tennis if you are watching. Please like and subscribe. Comment who you think will win the quarters in the comment section below. And I will see you on the next video.